To all the drivers out there delivering holiday cheer across our great country, season's greetings and a huge thank you from the Allen Lund Company.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Scott Thompson.
Welcome to the show. Lots to get to today. In just a few minutes, we're going to check in with OOIDA Executive Vice President Louis Pugh, who recently gave New York State officials a rundown of the truck parking crisis. He tells us what he told them. Then several GOP lawmakers made it crystal clear earlier this week that they don't agree with FMCSA's plans to mandate speed limiters and automatic emergency braking systems in heavy trucks. During a hearing that got contentious at times, members of the House T&I committee made their case. We cover what they said and how FMCSA Administrator Robin Hutchison and others responded. After that, from a few states doing something about the truck parking crisis to predatory towing practices, S.J. Munoz, Jamie Jones, and Ryan Witkowski hand out roses to those who are improving the lives of truckers and raspberries to those who aren't. And finally, one of the nation's largest freight brokers is pleading with the U.S. Supreme Court to turn down a case involving broker liability. It's a complicated but important case, one we'll break down with the help of Landline Magazine's Tyson Fisher. All of that and more coming up. But first, Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Scott. Louis Pugh joins me now. He is Executive Vice President for OOIDA. Louis, thank you for coming in.
Hey, it's my pleasure as always.
Now, you recently attended a meeting on truck parking for New York State. Tell me more about that meeting.
It was the entire state. I've been talking with New York State a couple times prior, and they invited me to attend along with some New York Truck Association was there, but mainly it was state DOTs, the thruway people, and folks like that. There was about 50 or 60 people.
What is truck parking like in New York State?
I think most truck drivers will tell you it's hit or miss, and especially down around the city, a lot of not very good places to park down there. They've closed some places in New York, but they have opened some over past years. We have a board member, Lou Esposito, and he's been instrumental in pushing back into New York, and which is what I always tell people. You need to really push at your state because just most people don't have parking problems in their state, so they don't think about it. But that's the tough thing here. You have to work on your state to help the guy 2 states away, and he needs to be doing it to help you.
And what other things were discussed at the meeting in regards to truck parking?
A lot of discussion was actually about the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. They're very interested in that. The good thing that I think that I'm really starting to see a big turn in state, especially with state DOTs, is they have finally come to the realization that there is a parking problem and that they are trying to come up with ways to fix that. But it has finally hit home. I guess the roosters have come home to roost, or however you say it, but they finally just realized that this is an issue. So that's a big step. That's a huge step, because even with national money out there, if we can get this Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act across the finish line, it's going to take states to make this happen. A lot of talk about how the education process of the people, how we've got to get past this NIMBY stuff, how we've got to be looking at new ways, different ways, and coming up with more original ideas. The same old just doesn't work anymore.
Why do you think it's taken this long to get to this point where you think they might be starting to understand?
Well, as I say that anytime I talk about this, truck parking isn't sexy. Let's face the facts. Elected officials, political people, bureaucrats, whoever, they like sexy because they like to point and say, I did that, or that's because of me, or my department did that, or my agency, or whoever.
Yeah.
Okay? Unfortunately, everybody wants their stuff, but nobody wants trucks. So the last thing most people want to say is, yeah, I put that truck parking lot in there because now you have all these trucks over there. as a trucker, I think it's a good thing to have trucks sitting everywhere. I like to look at trucks and hear them idle, so, that's a good thing. But that means our country's moving and you have stuff. But the one thing that I thought was really good that was brought up, and it was brought up by a gentleman from the state, is that truckers, if they can and have the ability, try to avoid places that have little to no parking or it's harder for them to find a place to park, which he explained means that if you're one of those places, right now the markets are down, markets are tight, so truckers, it's a little harder. But like during COVID and times like that when freight was good, truckers have options. They're going to not choose to come to you, which means you could have shortages of product, longer delays getting product, and that could not only affect you personally, but could affect businesses or industry from coming into your area and building and creating jobs and all kinds of things, which I think was a wonderful thing to bring up, because one thing bureaucrats like is they like more businesses to make more money so they can get more taxes to build and do more things.
What input did you offer at the meeting?
Myself, I didn't get any input in the beginning when we were all together. Then what they did was they broke us out into regional groups. I just was put in the Western group, which was kind of like Rochester to the Erie, Pennsylvania line. They were talking about how a couple of the people had rest areas and the thruway were saying how they don't hear that they have a problem. They're not hearing problems of where they are from their managers and their people in the field. And I said, so how's that? I asked a question. How's that reported? Because if they're not having a problem because they're full every night and they know they're being used and it's all good, or are they really getting out there and looking around in the evenings to see, yeah, they're full, but every exit ramp within 20 miles of there is full as well, and there's trucks parked everywhere else. And so, so that was, they didn't have an answer for that, but that was brought up. The other thing I brought up was the importance, especially in the Buffalo area, that little I-90 area coming from Pennsylvania up to Buffalo, they get hammered with snow, hammered from lake effect snow. So the one thing I brought up was the fact of signage, telling truckers where they can park, where they can get to. I mean, I know my one friend, he spent like 3 or 4 days in a bowling alley parking lot one time because that's just where he could get into. And they were talking about how they have places and they have emergency parking. But yeah, that's the real problem is drivers don't know where they are.
Yeah.
So they close the roads, there's no signage, and guys are just sort of on their own to kind of find it. And, if you're a trucker who runs to Buffalo all the time, you probably have an idea where you can go and can't go. If you're somebody from, South Carolina and you've never been to Buffalo once, or you only go there once every 4 or 5 years, you have no idea where to go or what you're doing.
What is your goal when you go to these types of meetings, meeting with different groups? What's the goal?
The biggest goal is just to discuss the problem, the real issues, what we hear from members, what they see. It's really good when it's a place like New York or somewhere that I've trucked personally because I can bring up my own experiences. I brought up experience. The one experience I also brought up was, which didn't happen in New York, but happened in Massachusetts, about being woke up, given a parking ticket, and sent on my down the road because I wasn't parked in a supposed truck spot, and how that kind of stuff happens as well. And drivers really have their backs against the wall. So, but the important thing, again, is to carry what we hear from our members, what I hear from our board of directors, the real people out there on the road, plus past experience, plus what we know just from being here and being part of OOIDA.
All right. Louis, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Executive Vice President for OOIDA, Louis Pugh. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Scott, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. Coming up next, get ready for some fireworks. You'll hear several GOP lawmakers question FMCSA Administrator Robin Hutchison about the agency's plans on speed limiters and other issues, and they don't hold back.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back.
Listen to the truckers. I think they would know better than the bureaucrats and specifically Congress on this.
If there was one message that the various administrators within the U.S. Department of Transportation should have taken away from a hearing within a House Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee on December 13th, that would be it. Listen to the truckers. The messenger there, Representative Troy Nehls of Texas, who along with other committee members was given a few minutes to address and ask questions of those administrators, a panel that included Robin Hutchison, administrator of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Representative Nehls had just a few minutes to make several points, and he made the most of that time, starting with the issue of speed limiters. You've probably heard on this show and any number of places that FMCSA is considering a mandate for most commercial motor vehicles. In response to an advance notice of proposed rulemaking, more than 15,000 comments came in, many of them from truck drivers, opposing a requirement that, in many cases, would force them to drive below the legal speed. Representative Nehls honed in on that, and we'll let that exchange play out. You'll hear the congressman reference a Truck Safety Coalition fundraiser that Administrator Hutchison spoke at in September.
Now, I know you may not be able to comment in detail about the substance of the final rule, but I hope you would agree with me that a credible process is very, very important, particularly when working through controversial rulemakings. Would you agree we need to get this right? Yeah.
Representative Nehls, yes, I agree.
Very good. Okay. So this is why it concerns me. This is what concerns me, that in late September, FMCSA included a specified or a specific speed limit for the speed limiter rule, 68 miles an hour. It was in the USDOT Unified Agenda. This was quickly rescinded and chalked up as a clerical error. Did you know about that? 68 miles an hour, USDOT? It's a clerical error. However, the same week, I believe that you were a keynote speaker at a high-dollar fundraiser. They dubbed it as a soiree sponsored by labor unions, trial attorneys, large trucking companies. All of these stakeholders have been pressuring your agency to select a speed limiter rule set at 60 miles an hour, well below what the agency had indicated it was prepared to select. Were these two occurrences connected in any way?
Representative, I appreciate the opportunity to make clarifications here. We have not yet set a speed limit, and we have not issued an NPRM in which that speed limit would be suggested for feedback.
Do you believe that it hurts the credibility of rulemaking process by attending, keynoting a fundraiser for advocates on one side of the issue while the regulation is under consideration?
Representative, we take very seriously the fidelity of the process of rulemaking. And we don't discuss the contents of the rule even as we're engaging with our stakeholders around the
I'll trust you on this. I'm going to trust you on this, but I just hope that you equally consider the 15,000 comments from America's truckers who have provided input on this rulemaking. They're not going to be able to host a big fundraiser for you, but are you familiar with Landline magazine? You familiar with this?
Representative, I am.
It's a very good magazine. Do you read it, or do you just get it, or it sits on your desk, or do you read this? This is the October 2023 issue, page 12. Very dangerous, very dangerous. It says here, talking about the speed limiters on this thing. Read this article, because I tell you, the people that travel around, and I think you mentioned earlier that truckers are moving a lot of our goods and service around. Listen to the truckers. I think they would know better than the bureaucrats and specifically Congress on this.
Congressman Nels also took aim at the proposed mandate of automatic emergency braking systems, which we'll get into in just a moment or two. But let's round out the lawmakers who had speed limiters on their minds on Wednesday. That list includes Representative Mike Bost of Illinois, who voiced legitimate concerns about the speed differentials a mandate would cause between cars and trucks on the highway.
I have two questions that are of concern, and I'm just going to express them because I know you've probably never drove a tractor trailer up and down the highway, but it's just an assumption. Maybe you have. But there's two problems. One, in the state of Illinois, when I was in the state legislature, the problem is that we had one limit for trucks and one limit for cars, and we did discover through our research that it actually caused more wrecks than it would if it would just flow of traffic would have worked. Now, the other problem that you have is if you have a driver who is a skilled driver, and all of a sudden he's going to get in a situation and you have now limited his ability to use speed to react, to get away and protect while driving a vehicle. You have changed the vehicle dynamics and therefore you're endangering people rather than saving them by making it to where you have a limiter that doesn't allow a professional driver to make decisions to try to either speed up to get out of the way or speed up to go around a situation that might be occurring in front of them. So that's something I think you should consider as well.
And yet more pushback from Representative Eric Burleson of Missouri, who also noted that the combination of forcing truck drivers to operate below highway speed limits and work under strict hours of service regulations could prompt speeding in slower zones. We'll let this exchange play out as well.
When I talk to truckers back home, they already feel that the federal government imposes strict regulations on them. This includes the hours of service regulations that limit how far they can drive. They are faced with long days that usually end with an hour searching for a parking spot, which is exhausting to them. And now you're telling them that they'll have to reach their destinations at a slower pace. With the hours of service regulation already imposed, is it smart to mandate the installation of trucks speed limiters when truckers are already heavily regulated? In their mind, when is enough enough? Many are afraid that if these mandates are implemented, then truckers will not only be subject to hours of service, but will be forced to get to their destination slower. And they feel like the need to make up. So here's my question. Many of these truckers may end up in a situation where they have to make up time, and because they have a speed limiter, the only place for them to make up time is probably on city streets, suburbs. They'll have to make up time probably going through construction zones. Are you concerned about the motivation that you're creating to be able to, I think, reduce safety in some of these very important areas?
Representative, thank you so much for this question. And I want to start by saying we share your commitment to drivers and certainly to their safety and the safety of everybody who travels. In our prioritization of safety and on drivers, I personally have spent a lot of time traveling around and talking with drivers themselves. I was just in Missouri at OIDA, sitting around the table, hearing about their concerns firsthand. And I understand that sometimes drivers, they do feel squeezed, and we're doing everything we can through bipartisan infrastructure law resources to study the compensation structure, detention time. But I understand, Representative, that you are asking specifically about speed limiters, and I'll say again that we are underway in a process of rulemaking. However, we have not yet issued any notice of proposed rulemaking. We've not yet set.
Well, I would encourage you to not implement that rule. I think that you would have an outcry from that community. With all these regulations, it seems like there's a lack of trust. I trust the truck drivers in my community, and I'm extremely thankful for them. They kept this country alive during COVID. And so, but it seems like the administration's policy is a lack of trust. So my question is, do you trust truck drivers to be safe on the road?
Representative, drivers are really at the heart of what we do, and safety is our mission at FMCSA, and I've met so many drivers with millions of miles of safe driving. I spoke with groups of drivers as they were about to compete in the safety championship in Indianapolis. And I know that there are so many safe drivers committed to safety.
So in short, you believe, you trust them and their commitment to safety, then why, I would just hypothetically ask, why would we need to implement another rule on them to take away some of those decisions?
Administrator Hutchison's response there was indicative of her responses to most of the inquiries throughout the hearing. She declined to answer specific questions about the speed limiter rulemaking until a formal proposal is released. That notice of proposed rulemaking, which could be unveiled as early as this month, is expected to include a top speed at that time. The other big trucking issue that came up more than once during Wednesday's hearing was with regard to automatic emergency braking systems, which we referred to earlier. A joint rulemaking between FMCSA and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration would require them for heavy trucks as well. Just as with speed limiters, Representative Nels has strong feelings on this issue too. And once again, he pointed to Landline Magazine's coverage of the issue, asking acting NHTSA Administrator Ann Carlson at one point if she reads it.
The AEB rule, I'd like to pivot to that. I believe NHTSA, FMCSA has gone far beyond congressional intent to include vehicles for which AEB technology is not practical. Vocational emergency vehicles, the rule was written, is not implementable. I don't believe it is. Vocational vehicles are not completed on our factory lines. The chassis is sent to third-party customization shops where heavy equipment is added, like a dump truck with a big snowplow in front of it. Manufacturers would not be able to certify the system once the vehicle is altered, which can lead to a misleading understanding of AEB for the operator. Ms. Carlson, you familiar with this magazine?
I don't.
Oh.
But I will.
You got to read the magazine.
You recommend it highly.
The whole industry, everybody's driving it. Very dangerous. So why had a truck say an automated emergency brake mandate would jeopardize safety? It talks about one of the truck drivers that it was either a shadow or the guardrail caused her to lose control in this thing, scared the hell out of her. Matter of fact, I got a little Lexus, and I was backing up out of the grocery store, the H-E-B the other day, and all of a sudden, the damn thing slammed the brakes and scared my wife. I said, what the heck's happening? Well, this thing must have detected a vehicle coming from my left or my right. This can be very, very dangerous. And if you read this, matter of fact, I'll give you this copy once I'm done. You need to read this when it talks about these brakes and how dangerous it's going to be.
Reports of false braking activations are not isolated. NHTSA itself opened an investigation into false automatic braking on certain Freightliner and Western Star trucks earlier this year. Despite that, NHTSA and FMCSA still plan to move forward with the proposal, with a final rule slated for April. Representative Mike Collins of Georgia, who operates a trucking company, told Administrators Hutchison and Carlson that the technology is not ready. Administrator Hutchison started by noting that the AEB mandate is mandated by the infrastructure law, but Congressman Collins wasn't content to accept that as an answer.
Representative, I really appreciate your questions and appreciate the firsthand knowledge you have in the trucking industry. I know you're a second or third generation family operator, so they're very pointed questions at us. Automatic emergency braking, as you note, is congressionally mandated. The vehicle technology itself is analyzed by our colleagues at NHTSA.
So do you have any examples of where y'all have been addressing the false activations? Have y'all got any examples of consulting with truck drivers?
Representative, I'm going to divide my comments from the rulemaking to preserve the fidelity of the rulemaking progress and just say that I have ridden along with many truck drivers and talked about this very issue on automatic.
You're talking to a trucker. I'm in the trucking business. As a matter of fact, I probably own about 80 trucks with the collision avoidance device, is what we call it, on the front of them. And I will tell you, they are not bulletproof. They're nowhere near it. And are you aware of what happens when this device goes off at 50, 60 miles an hour?
Yes.
If you're not wearing a seatbelt, it'll put you to the windshield almost. And it's not there. The technology is not there.
For Landline Now, I'm Scott Thompson, and before we toss it to break, we'll leave you with that bit of wisdom courtesy of Representative Troy Nels of Texas, just because it's worth repeating.
Listen to the truckers. I think they would know better than the bureaucrats and specifically Congress on this.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Landline Now, welcome back. Has your senator or congressman made you happy lately? Did the truck stop make you kind of sad? When they do either one, here at Landline, we have a special way of responding.
Ew.
We call it Roses and Razzberries. Staff writer S.J. Munoz keeps track of such things for Landline Magazine and for our program. S.J. is here now with the good, the bad, and the ugly from recent news.
And we're back with Roses, Razzberries, and who knows what else. S.J. Munoz, Jamie Jones, and Ryan Witkowski here with you again. And before we get into the show here, I'd just like to go ahead and wish everyone the happy holidays, of course, starting with my my Landline compatriots here. And a burning question that we do have, eggnog, yay or nay? I'll let you go first, Jamie.
Oh, no.
Nay?
Oh, God, yes. I'm all in on eggnog. I'm all in on eggnog.
See, but I'm pro gingerbread, and you're not.
I am decidedly anti-gingerbread. It's disgusting.
I'm not even a dairy guy, but when it comes to eggnog, like, I'm all about it. I'll take that gingerbread, dip it right in the dairy, and we're going to town. Like,
toss a little whiskey in there, you got yourself a nice
that's
treat.
a perfectly good waste of whiskey.
You can have a sidecar.
And we like to laugh about the holidays and stuff and all of that. And we've had segments that we've done on the show because we do know that for a lot of truck drivers, the holidays aren't easy. You're away from home. Maybe the family's proceeding with the plans as, they should be or, whatever they think. But, when you're not actually able to celebrate the holiday on the actual day, sometimes that can really get in your head and not be a good thing. So, or maybe your kids just really don't get it.
Well, then you assume that not everybody has a family or someone that they can celebrate with. And
Right.
we just kind of assume that everyone's got somewhere to go or something to do.
Right.
And obviously, if you're out on the road by yourself, that's really just going to reinforce the feeling of loneliness.
Yeah, so we've had segments here on Landline Now recently with Buck Black, a therapist, who actually addressed how you can cope, with those feelings during the holiday season. And we will definitely throw those back up, links to those on landline.media so that you'll have access to that. Because if you are at all, reach out to a friend. Just, do whatever you have to, but don't let those thoughts just really ruin it for you.
Well, and you obviously, more than likely, you're not going to be alone either. I know, just, being, feeling kind of down around the holidays, you probably feel like, I don't want to bother anybody, or you're like, I don't want to.
You don't want to be the Debbie Downer.
Yeah, exactly. But
there's another SNL reference.
Yeah. You're obviously not the only one. So, like you said, encourage people to reach out if they need to talk to somebody.
Sure. I think the one thing that he said that kind of hit home with me, though, is drivers that have children at home, obviously, you're going to have to talk this through and explain to them, hey, I'm not going to be able to be home on this day, or, we're going to have to do things a little bit different. I've got 3 kids at home. Trying to explain that to them, and I'm there on a daily basis, is difficult enough. And so I'm like, man, I didn't stop to think about the fact, trying to be 3-4 states away or on the other side of the country and have to celebrate a lot of this. Now, fortunately, technology makes it a little easier. We can video chat now. We can FaceTime. You can do all sorts of things to kind of narrow that gap, but it's still going to be difficult if you've got little kids.
Well, and if you're out on the road, be sure and check out Meals for 18 Wheels, because if you are alone on the road, at least a home-cooked meal delivered to your truck might make it a little bit better.
Yeah, and I don't know about your kids, but the countdown to Christmas starts about after July 4th. It's been marked off every day. I mean, one of them moved it to the 17th just last night. I was like, we're a little few days ahead, but we're getting there.
That's right. They're going to start making those 6-month advent calendars.
Anyway, so, we'll just kick this off with roses to anybody who's actually spending some time taking care of their own mental health during the holiday season, because it is not always easy for everyone.
Yeah, and families, too. Step up as well. Do your part, too, because it can't be easy for the guys and the gals behind the wheel, but I'm sure it's, a lot easier when you've got a support system at home that's, easy to make it happen. But,
100%.
Well, enough with the roses. Let's get to the raspberries because I know Jamie loves this. And these ones are going out to FMCSA for their lack of oversight regarding the ELD mandate that took effect 6 years ago, something like that? Recently, FMCSA removed 10 devices from the approved list of registered devices. Now, we've seen this happen a lot over the last year. It's been the same issue as well, where basically they don't have a screen on the ELD that can print out an hours of service log immediately when it's requested by the inspector. And so some of these get removed from the list. 10 were revoked recently. However, among those, one of them was added right back to it 1 week later. That was the CIELD log. So if you have that, fortunately for you, you don't need to go get a new ELD. However, the weird thing about this is, and again, we've seen, I don't know, it feels like 14 or so over just this last year.
You're fixated on this.
I really am. Because I got on there and I was looking, I was like, how many of these have been revoked over this last year? There's 171 devices on the revoked list. Only 19 of them have been revoked by FMCSA. The other 152 have been self-revoked. And that's part of the issue, is that since they started having the ELD mandate, FMCSA has allowed companies to just self-certify their ELDs and say, yep, this meets all the regulations, let's go.
That's self-certification. That's the adult equivalent of a pinky promise.
And of those self-certified, only 19 of them have been revoked by FMCSA. 152 others were revoked by the company because they said, we don't meet their minimum requirements. It's insane to me, and it just shows you how little oversight they really have about it.
When they first were rolling out electronic logs, they had a press conference at the Mid-America Trucking Show, one of these companies, and they decided to hand around their electronic logging device. And, journalists are skeptical by nature, but, first one person grabs this plastic box and kind of rattles. It was an empty plastic box. There was no electronics or anything in it. And we're like, everybody's looking at it like, bang, 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 bang. It's like, what the heck, dude?
I mean, I'm kind of one of those people that I try to put together, a shelf or, a dresser by looking at the picture. But in this case, you need a little bit more than a picture to go off of. So I can imagine the confusion.
The other thing that drove me bonkers about this whole 10 devices being removed was because one of the devices was actually revoked after being reinstated after being revoked earlier this year. So one of the 10 devices has been revoked twice from the list in 1 year and managed to get back on the list and now is back off the list. I guess if you own an ELD, buckle up and just hope you got one that's compliant. I don't really have anything positive for you on that.
Luckily the members have you. You're all over it. So,
Ryan will keep you updated. Don't worry about it.
I absolutely will.
All right, so we often, speak of truck parking on the show, and that's come up again this time. A lot of times it's, the new location or, the new travel stops, things of that sort. But we've seen recently a lot more state DOTs proposing plans and kind of maybe putting a little bit of that money where their mouth is, so to speak. These roses are for Arizona and Florida. And Arizona officials they have a plan to construct 800 some truck parking spaces, while in Florida they're requesting about $25 million. This would help address the truck parking issues in their area. According to the Arizona DOT, the recommendation was based upon demand at existing rest areas and basically where there's truck parking doesn't exist.
They're only building 3 new rest areas, by the way. This was another thing I dove down the rabbit hole on. It's insane. 7 of them are just improvements to existing spots, but they are going to add, at least in the immediate, there's 3 projects that are slated to go for about $30 million, and they're going to add around 370 spots. So the rest of those, 500 or so parking spots, they're kind of pie in the sky to be determined because guess what? They don't have money for it. So they came out with this great plan, and we're all standing and applauding them and giving them roses for saying, hey, we're going to add 800
But
parking spots.
They have a plan. We just need a parking bill to get passed in Congress
At least we do have that $32 million in
So
place.
I'm going to go home and I'm going to tell my kids we're getting a pool. I don't know when. We're working on the funding for it, but someday
if there's we're
going to have a pool. We're going to address the pool crisis in my backyard.
There's a Fighting for Pools website. You can feel free to use it as the Fighting for Truckers. We often direct people to that. So.
Sorry to derail
No,
that.
you're good, you're
we were
good,
giving roses, and here I'm turning them to raspberries.
You had to get it off your chest. I could see it in your
did.
eye. But Florida's parking would be added along the state highway system. According to the DOT there, as many as 450 spaces are needed basically immediately, with another 750 spots potentially near the next few years.
Anything to add?
Yeah,
Ryan?
are you okay with this?
I'm fine with what you're doing in Florida. Keep it up. And you have great pie.
Well, I'm going to pile on the raspberry wagon here, and these are for predatory towing.
Easy for you to say.
Right?
That's
No,
half the
that's the
battle.
last time I'm saying it. Really, raspberries for this ongoing problem. I mean, too many truckers have fallen victim to this whole situation. And the American Transportation Research Institute has recently analyzed the state of predatory trucking. Predatory towing.
Predatory trucking.
I'm going to get it out eventually. All right. Well, OOIDA was among those contributing to the study, and it revealed that 83% of motor carriers, regardless of location, have been billed excessive rates. 83%. 82% were hit with unwarranted extra charges. More than 70% experienced excessive daily storage rates and vehicle release delays or access issues. And only 10% were allowed to use the towing company of their choice. So, I mean, those numbers are jarring. Yeah, I mean, it's really, you can't say, if this doesn't say that there's a problem with those numbers, you're just crazy. But based on incidents relative to mileage, Indiana was the worst state for predatory towing, followed by New Jersey and Mississippi, according to the data.
You are just on a roll today.
I know. I talk for a living.
Predatory towing.
Oh,
See how easy it was?
Now you're just showing off.
She got gingerbread on the brain. I knew we shouldn't have started there. Yeah.
Actually, it was the whiskey I took out of the eggnog.
Is it me? Let's end things on a good note, SJ. I didn't realize it was on to me. But another successful year for truckers, for troops, and fundraising at OOIDA. Roses to everyone who contributed to this year's Truckers for Troops, which was able to improve from funds raised 1 year ago. So congratulations to everyone there. Considering current economic conditions, I think it's pretty impressive that everyone was willing to open up their pocketbooks.
Yeah, don't really kind of know, especially with, we're not going to try to get into that world of that discussion, but just with the economy and just, things in general, inflation, all that type of stuff, it's kind of hard to, sometimes, feel like you're maybe asking too much. But OIDA and the Truckers for Troops always steps up. And even that VCP, word for word, they basically said that whenever they ask, it's always answered.
Oh, yeah. And, the thing is, so we raised roughly $26,000 this year. Stop it.
I did nothing.
I remember when we had the very first Truckers for Troops, and we were sitting here and we were doing the radiothon and trying to guess how much money we thought we'd raise. And it was like, man, it'd be cool if we could raise like $5,000. And here we are 17 years later, and we've raised over $825,000 through Truckers for Troops.
It's an impressive total for sure. This year's campaign taking place and raising a $10,000 check for Veterans Community Center, and we also donated a truckload of supplies for the local tiny house community. Now, I'm tripping over my words, but those contributions, they go to help the Veterans Community Project continue to expand their services as well as new locations. In addition to the KC location, VCP also has campuses in St. Louis, in Longmont, Colorado, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Milwaukee, Oklahoma City, and just announced Glendale, Arizona as well. The charity's goal is to have a community in every single state in the union. And as part of this year's Truckers for Troops, SJ and I had a chance to speak with a couple of those locations as to where they are in the process. I spoke with the director of the Sioux Falls, South Dakota location, who actually just welcomed their first 3 veterans into the community.
How cool is that?
About 6 weeks ago, maybe 8 weeks ago. I don't know. It was a while since I've done that.
They had to be stoked.
They were absolutely stoked. And when I was speaking with him, the executive director, he dropped a couple of S-bombs. He was so excited about some of the progress that he was doing. So very professional guy. And you want to know what? I appreciate a good curse word when it's put in for emphasis. So.
Yeah, you might hear those a little too often than the rest of us, but that's a different story. All right. Well, of course, also the care packages is still part of the Truckers for Troops program, sending those to military personnel overseas. So if you would like to request one of those, you're in, military personnel or, maybe for your family, reach out to Nikki Johnston at ooida.com. All right. Well, just to remind you, as always, if you have an idea for a rose or raspberry, please send them to roses Roses at landlinemag.com. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Roses and Razzberries. Landline Now will be back after this commercial break.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Welcome back to the show. One of the nation's largest freight brokers is pleading with the Supreme Court to turn down a case involving broker liability. It's a complicated but important case. One we'll break down with the help of Landline Magazine's Tyson Fisher, who's been covering it, and he joins us now in Studio A. Tyson, good to see you.
Good to be here, man.
So, like I said, this is a complicated case, but it is an important one because we're dealing with brokers, and obviously they've been in the spotlight of late here. Let's start with this case itself. We've got freight broker Global Trans at the center of it. Let's start at the beginning here, November 2017, and how this whole thing got started, I suppose.
Right. So in November 2017, Global Trans, which is like the third or fourth largest broker in the U.S., they brokered a load to Illinois-based Global Sunrise, which I know is going to get confusing at Global Sunrise and Global Trans.
A lot of players.
So that load was to be transported from Illinois to Texas. And so the crash occurred on the frontage road of I-45 in Conroe, Texas. And so according to the original complaint that was filed in March of 2018, the Global Sunrise driver, he made an improper turn. Long story short, he crashed into a motorcycle driven by Sean Lynn, who later died due to his injuries. So we have a fatal crash in play here. Mm-hmm. So skip to the lawsuit. Again, it was filed in March of 2018. Lynn's wife basically filed a lawsuit against Global Sunrise and then later added the broker, Global Trans. So what basically is being argued is that Global Trans was negligent in hiring an unsafe motor carrier. Now, this is where it gets kind of important because this isn't your run-of-the-mill carrier because because any trucker can get into a fatal crash. These things happen.
Sure.
But this isn't just, it's a bad actor, is the way we'll put it.
Yeah.
He was a chameleon carrier for the most part. The owners had previously owned two other trucking companies, both of which were shut down after multiple, regulation violations.
It's like that cup game where you just keep moving cups around and trying to move to something else.
And so, and the thing is, and even with the Global Sunrise, they had like multiple violations in the month, just the 1 month preceding being hired by Global Trans, multiple violations. All of this stuff is publicly available, and it doesn't take a whole lot of research to find this information. And that's basically what's being argued, which is Global Trans should have known that this was an unsafe carrier, and by not doing their due diligence, hiring negligence, they are responsible. And so in May of 2019, Global Sunrise's attorney withdrew from the case. They end up settling for $10 million. But that leaves Global Trans. And what Global Trans was able to do was they were able to walk away from this case at the district level, okay? And then that was affirmed by the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, what's being argued here is what is called the Federal Aviation Administration Authorization Act, which we'll call F4A for short.
Sure.
That is the heart of the case. And what F4A is a federal regulation or federal law. What it does is it addresses the patchwork of state regulation for motor carriers. In short, a state cannot enact a law or regulation related to the price, route, or service of any motor carrier, broker, or freight forwarder. That's what the state laws can't do. And that's essentially what Global Trans argue, which is by telling us that we're negligent in hiring, what you're asking us to do is we have to vet every single motor carrier, which will take a whole lot of time, a whole lot of money. By holding any broker negligent in a personal injury case, it's going to cost us a lot of money. essentially,
Sure.
which in turn is going to affect the price, route, or service of any motor carrier broker.
Okay.
And so they won on that argument at the Seventh Circuit's like, yeah, we agree. And so fast forward now, there is a petition to the Supreme Court. And so what the widow is asking the Supreme Court is that, hey, you guys forgot that there is a F4A safety exception. And basically what the exception is that the F4A preemption rule does not apply when it is in the case of a state's safety regulations. And so this is where it gets kind of complicated.
This is where it gets complicated. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All
yeah.
right. We're taking notes. It's fine.
But in short, they're saying it's like, this is a safety issue, and so there is this safety exception here, and that's what's going to be argued. That's trying to be argued at the Supreme Court level. Now, it's going to add another wrench here. Okay.
Okay.
There is conflicting rulings at the federal appellate level, right? So the Seventh Circuit said brokers are not responsible for hiring negligence. That's it. However, 2 years ago, the Ninth Circuit ruled the complete opposite in a very similar case that involved just a bad actor where you can get all that information publicly available. The Ninth Circuit found that C.H. Robinson was responsible for their hiring negligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we have now is that we have what we call a split circuit, circuit split, which essentially means you have one circuit saying, brokers are responsible, another circuit saying they're not responsible. What the petitioner is asking the Supreme Court is, you need to hear this case so we can, rectify this issue with the split circuit.
Right.
And so that's what's being
Which makes
argued
sense.
here.
Yeah. But Global Trans, again, the broker is saying to the Supreme Court, essentially urging them, hey, we're good. Don't take this up.
Pretty
because
much.
obviously this would potentially affect them in a negative way.
Right. And they actually mentioned that split of the court, and they're saying this is a weird argument, but what they're saying is what they're asking the Supreme Court is for the courts or the appellate courts to figure this out themselves. And basically what they're saying is there are so many similar cases going out through the district courts that in the future the circuit courts will probably figure this out on their own, possibly meaning the Ninth Circuit might overturn their own ruling because of all of these,
From 2020, I think it was.
I believe
that case in the Ninth Circuit against C.H. Robinson.
Correct.
That went the other way.
And so they're saying the courts is, hey, these things usually kind of correct themselves over time. So just let let it play out before you decide on anything, which it's a smart move because oftentimes when something goes to the Supreme Court, there's an over 70% rate of it being overturned. And so there's a lot at stake here.
Well, there's a lot at stake, yeah. And I think that's important to note here. We don't have enough time to get into this, unfortunately, because this case is interesting, and the Supreme Court will decide, I think, in the coming weeks probably if they're going to take this up or, as Global Trans wants, basically drop it, decline it. There could be implications for the broker industry. I mean, if we see this thing get overturned, the Supreme Court, obviously the law of the land, and this would have potential implications for the brokerage industry either way, right?
Yeah, because right now, like the Seventh Circuit ruled that in favor of the brokers. So if you have a federal case in Illinois, Indiana, or Wisconsin, the broker has the advantage. Meanwhile, if you have a case in the Ninth Circuit, which is the largest circuit in the United States, 20% of the population is going in favor against or favor of the plaintiff, usually in the case, against the broker. So the Supreme Court ruling, if it rules in favor of the petitioner, you're right, would mean that across the country, brokers will be held liable for negligent hiring if that's proven.
So right now we've got kind of a patchwork.
We do.
Kind of thing going on. Again, the Supreme Court, if they were to take this case up and decide either way, honestly, it could have implications for the entire industry.
Absolutely.
I think we got it.
Like I said, these Supreme Court cases are complicated.
It's complicated, but it's important. And Tyson, we appreciate you coming by and sharing this with us. We know you'll keep an eye on this and update us when there's a new development. Our thanks to Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine for covering this issue and so many others. And thanks to you for listening. You have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time right here on Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.